So I always try to ask others for advice, and I often get asked for advice, whether that's from a company or from a student or professional or just about anyone. I usually say yes. I will be happy to kind of meet and have a chat, maybe have a cup of coffee and give my advice. And it's just because it kind of fulfills this need for me to be valued, to kind of be recognized. And I even have a link on my website that's there just for people to kind of set up a meeting with me if they want my advice on any sort of thing. I think what I like about these sorts of meetings the most isn't listening to myself talk. I actually really hate it whenever the person just kind of asks a question and just sits there and listens. I think there's some value in that, but not often enough that makes it feel good for me. What I really value is that kind of dialogue, so the back and forth and the breakthroughs that can happen because of that dialogue. I also just hate wasting time. So if it's just me listening to myself talk, I often just think it's probably not worth it, either of our time. I first started kind of formally, professionally giving advice in 2014 when my boss asked me to supervise 2 bachelor's thesis groups. And it was the first time that I was actually paid for giving advice. And I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, that's the kind of the irony is that I was asked to give advice. I was being paid to give advice, but I had no clue what I was doing. Luckily, the groups that I was supervising were extremely patient and understanding, and they kind of let me get my footing. I just hoped that what I knew was going to help them in some way. Ultimately, they did fine. They all have gone on to do great and wonderful things. And then later, a few years later, I started really getting into entrepreneurship and kind of thinking about business models and business development because it was part of my research, but it was also part of my teaching. And so students would come to me and they would ask me for business advice. They would say, Anthony, we have this idea for a business or we have this idea for an innovation. What do you think? Where do you think we should go with this? How do you think we should go about it? I had probably a 15 or even 20-year history of very failed innovations and failed business ideas. So I knew what not to do, and I could give them advice on that. And their numbers eventually grew, and so more students were asking me for advice, and more businesses were coming to me asking me for their advice. I started working a few years later in international development. So I first started working in Mozambique. And then I found people coming to me for advice about international development matters. And again, these are kind of issues that I didn't really know anything about. So I was really hesitant to give advice at all because I mean, what do I know? So most often I would tell them, well, you need to talk to the people who are affected by this issue. I am not one that is affected by this issue. So how could I possibly be able to give you any good advice? So I felt really incompetent to advise a lot of the projects that I was being asked to advise. And I was very upfront with that. I was very straightforward and said, hey, look, I don't know anything about what you're asking me. This is what I imagine or what I think, but you really need to connect with people who have much more expertise and experience than I do. And eventually I got to a point where the kind of workload that was associated with just giving basic advice it wasn't sustainable. So I had to rethink things pretty dramatically. And I thought a lot about why I was being asked for advice at all. And I came down to it that, part of it has to do with my abilities and my knowledge, but a lot of it has to do with kind of the prestige of my position as an academic, the power that comes with that, the privilege that comes with being me. And so when I started asking myself, why do they want my advice? The answers I was imagining didn't make me feel very comfortable. And I get that sometimes these initiatives just need the face of an expert on them. And I'm always kind of happy to lend my reputation to support an initiative that I believe in. But just to be there as kind of a nominal, contributor doesn't always feel very good. So I started to be more selective with what kind of groups I was working with people who were asking me for my advice, and being really critical about what am I contributing. Is it just to attend a meeting? That's not really a good contribution in my opinion. Is it just for them to listen to me talk? Again, not the best contribution. I really wanted impact, and I wanted that collaboration, and I wanted grassroots involvement, and I wanted regular commitment and involvement. So I decided I was going to dedicate my time. I was going to put specific time on my schedule for this exact activity. And I just wanted to focus on a small group, 7 people as mentors and advisors, and 7 businesses as a kind of mentor and advisor to those businesses. And this helped. It helped for a couple of years. It helped kind of narrow my focus and really work directly with the people and the groups that I felt like I was making the most contribution. And so I got to a point now after a few years that I have to reevaluate again. And I really need to find a balance between my time that I spend kind of managing people and initiatives and projects and the time I spend creating. Because the time I spend creating is absolutely joyful for me, but it's not something I can just block off 30 minutes of my schedule like I can with a meeting and get a lot of management done. For creating, I need like half a day a minimum to really engage and focus in on my work. So these 1-hour blocks for meetings just don't work for me when it comes to creating, and you can't really do it vice versa. I don't really want to spend 4 hours in a meeting that could be done in 30 minutes. So I needed to kind of reevaluate my process again, and I've been doing this over the past few weeks and prioritize the needs that I felt most mattered, that were most important. And over the past few years, I managed to create a lot of stability in some of the companies that I've been advising and working with, and create some stability in the people whose lives I was mentoring, their professional careers. So I was really happy with kind of saying that now is the time that you as an individual, as a professional, can kind of go about your work. You don't necessarily need me on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. You as a business can kind of go about your work because you don't necessarily need me day-to-day or week-to-week. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not making myself available to these folks. It just means that it's time to take a step back. And one of the reasons is that there's just always more needs than there are solutions, and there's always more needs than there are time. So I guess my takeaway here is just to ask, are you a mentor? If you are, what value are you bringing to the people that you're mentoring? Is it just your name on their website, or is there substance behind it? Are you actually making a kind of grassroots contribution? Do you have commitment to the work that you're doing, or is it just kind of nominal participation? Take a step back. Maybe it's time to focus on fewer things, but giving it more of your attention. And you recognize that if you're a creator who's also working in this space, managing a business or acting as an entrepreneur, you need to understand that there's a difference in approach here on how you work with your time. The managing part you can achieve in 30 minutes, 1 hour, maybe back-to-back meetings. But for the creating stuff, you really got to spend a little bit more substantial time. If you can manage that, you will be on your way to an incredibly fulfilling life.